The building emptied at 7:04 p.m., the way it always did, floor by floor, until only the hum of the server room and the squeak of a cleaning cart remained. Vivian Marsh pushed her cart past the glass-walled offices on the 31st floor of a Chicago investment firm, her reflection sliding across a dozen dark screens. She was 58 years old, small and quick. Silver threading through hair she still wore, pulled back the way she had 30 years ago in a lecture hall. Nobody on this floor knew her last name. Most didn't know she had one. What none of them knew. What she had never once mentioned. In 4 years of emptying their trash, bins and vacuuming their carpets, was that Vivian Marsh had once stood at the front of that kind of lecture hall herself, chalk in hand, explaining stochastic calculus to graduate students who would go on to run the very kind of firm she now cleaned at night. That life had ended the year her husband Daniel got sick. When the medical bills outpaced 2 incomes and then 1, when the university position quietly became unavailable to a woman who had missed 11 months for hospital visits. She did not talk about it. She had learned that some doors once closed are better left unknocked on. She still did the math, though. It was the one thing illness and debt and time had not managed to take from her. Some habits outlive their usefulness and become something closer to prayer. That night, on her second-to-last floor, working late at his desk in a glass office marked with brushed steel letters that spelled Bennett, was the reason the whole floor had been tense for a week. Julian Bennett was 41, the firm's chief financial officer, the kind of man who wore his confidence like a second, better-fitted suit. He was still there at 9:40 p.m. because the Whitfield account, $11 million, a client the firm could not afford to lose, was set to move to a competitor if his team couldn't fix a volatility model that had been failing for 6 days. 3 analysts, 2 consultants, and 1 very expensive outside firm had all failed to explain why the numbers kept breaking in the same place, at the same variable every single time. Vivian knocked lightly on his open door, the way she always did, and began emptying his bin without a word. Julian didn't look up. He rarely did. Before we continue, if you believe that intelligence has no job title and dignity wears no badge, please like this video, subscribe to Kindness Tales, and share this with someone who needs to believe in people again today. She had a habit, small, private, unremarkable to anyone who wasn't looking closely, of pulling a battered spiral notebook from her cart during her 10-minute break and working through problems that existed nowhere but in her own mind. She did it on the loading dock stairwell most nights, where nobody came. Numbers were the only place she still felt like herself. That night, distracted by a phone call from her daughter about a car repair bill, she left the notebook on the small round table by the break room coffee machine. Julian found it 40 minutes later. At 10:20 p.m., when he came out for coffee, he didn't need, hunting for anything that might unstick his mind. He almost didn't pick it up. It looked like scrap paper, the cover soft and cracked, corners furred from handling. But the page it had fallen open to caught his eye before his hand did. Rows of equations in tight, confident handwriting. A derivation halfway down the page that looked impossibly like a partial solution to a volatility surface problem. His volatility surface problem? The exact variable his team had been stuck on for 6 days, worked out in pencil, in the margins, like it was nothing. He assumed it was left by one of the quant analysts. He carried it back to his office, sat down, and began reading more carefully. Page after page, it wasn't scattered scribbling. It was a mind working in real time. Crossouts where an approach failed. Small notes in the margin like check boundary, condition, and this assumes constant drift. Probably wrong for Q3. Whoever had written this understood something his 6-figure consultants did not. At 10:47 p.m., Vivian returned to the break room for her notebook and found it gone. Her stomach dropped in a way she recognized from years of being one missed step away from losing something that mattered. She retraced her cart's path floor by floor, increasingly certain, increasingly frightened, until she reached the glass office marked Bennett and saw it open on his desk, her handwriting lit by his desk lamp like something exposed. "This is yours." He said it as a question that wasn't really a question. He was staring at her now the way people rarely stared at her, not through her, not past her, but directly at her, like she had just become visible in a room she had been invisible in for years. She thought about lying. She thought about saying she'd found it, that it belonged to someone else, that she didn't know anything about the numbers inside it. The old instinct, the one that had learned to make itself small, to not invite questions, to keep her head down and her cart moving, rose up fast and familiar. But she was tired in a way that went beyond the hour, tired of being smaller than she was. "It's mine," she said. "I'm sorry, I must have left it by the coffee machine." "It won't happen again. Did you write this?" He turned the notebook toward her, tapping the page with the boundary condition note. "Tonight, while you were working, during my break. Do you understand what this is?" She looked at the page for a long moment, and something in her straightened, some old posture returning to her spine that hadn't been called on in 15 years. It's a volatility model that assumes constant drift, which is probably why it's breaking. Markets don't drift constantly during a rate environment like this one. You need a stochastic drift term, something that lets the volatility itself move instead of holding it fixed. I was working out what that term might look like. I don't have your actual data, so it's just theory. But the math holds. Julian sat back slowly. 6 days, 3 analysts, one outside firm at $400 an hour. And the woman who emptied his trash can had identified the flaw in 11 minutes of a coffee break, using nothing but a pencil and a notebook with a broken spine. "Who are you?" he said, and this time it wasn't sharp. It was quiet, almost reverent, the voice of a man recalculating everything he thought he understood about the last 4 years of his own building, she told him. Not everything, not that first night, but enough. A doctorate in applied mathematics. 11 years teaching graduate-level statistics and financial modeling at a university 2 states away. A husband whose illness had cost them the house, then the car, then eventually the version of her life where a mind like hers had anywhere obvious to go. A resume with an 11-month gap that every application system quietly filtered into a drawer nobody opened. She had taken the night cleaning job 4 years ago because it paid $18.50 an hour, came with health coverage after 90 days, and let her sleep during the hours her daughter was at school. She had told herself the notebook was just a way to keep her mind from going soft. She had not let herself think of it as anything more than that in a long time. Julian didn't say anything for almost a full minute. Then he did something that surprised them both. He stood, walked to his office door, and closed it. Not to hide her, but because what he wanted to say next felt like it deserved privacy, hers as much as his. "I have a client meeting in 9 hours, he said. "I have 3 analysts who cannot solve this. I have a notebook that just solved half of it during someone's coffee break. I would like to hire the person who wrote this, not clean my office. Solve this." Vivian laughed once, involuntary and a little broken, the laugh of someone who has stopped expecting doors to open. "I have a cart to finish. 2 more floors." "I'll get someone to cover the floors," Julian said. "Sit down, please. Show me the rest of what's in your head." She sat. For the next 3 hours, at a conference table on the 31st floor of a building she had swept for 4 years without anyone learning her first name, Vivian Marsh rebuilt a stochastic drift model line by line, while a chief financial officer took notes like a graduate student again, humbled in a way his career had never required of him before. The Whitfield account closed the following week, not because of a miracle, but because the model held, because the numbers finally told a truth the old ones had been hiding. Julian did not simply thank her. He walked her resume, personally, into the office of the firm's chief risk officer 3 days later, and said one sentence that would rewrite the shape of Vivian's next decade. "I want you to meet the person who solved what none of us could." It was not instant. Nothing true ever is. There were interviews, credential verifications, a probationary contract, a first paycheck that made her sit alone in her car in the parking garage and cry for 11 minutes before she trusted herself to drive. But 6 months later, Vivian Marsh had a badge with her full name on it, a desk on the 31st floor with a window instead of a cart, and a title, Senior Quantitative Analyst, that no application filter would ever again quietly discard. She still kept the notebook. She kept it in her desk drawer, cover cracked, corners soft, and some nights, long after the building had emptied again, she would see the new cleaning crew move through the floor, and she would nod to them the way no one had ever quite nodded to her. And she would remember exactly how far a person could travel between one coffee break and the next, if only someone paused long enough to read what they had already written.